All right, guys, here we go. So we're going to go over mezzanine debt today. So mezzanine debt is the middle layer of the capital that falls between secured senior debt and equity. This type of capital is usually not secured by assets and, well, it's not secured by the commercial real estate asset and is lent strictly based on the company's ability to repay the debt from free cash flow or future capital events. So a lot of the stuff we're going to be looking at is going to pertain to that future capital events. Mezzanine financing can be used for kind of, propelling a company to a next step, things like that. But really what we're talking about today is the future capital events, the development of commercial real estate or value add on commercial real estate and how it plays into that. But just be aware that's not the only place that mezzanine is used. So, quick refresher, remember the capital stack. Start at the bottom with debt, 65% debt, 20% equity. Obviously, we've got a gap here, and that is where mezzanine comes into play. So, mezzanine sits above the debt, but before the equity. It is not part of the equity. So it's not JV equity, GP, or capital, or pref equity. It's part of the debt. So it is money lent, goes along with senior debt and mezzanine debt in this section. So the basics of mezzanine. Mezzanine is junior or subordinate to the senior debt in the capital stack. Mezzanine debt is not secured by real estate collateral. Mezzanine debt earns interest and is paid monthly, quarterly, or annually. It'll also have fees, PIK coupons, and possibly equity options. We'll get into all of this later, but what we'll cover now is just the first couple of bullet points and understand that. It's easier to talk about those two together. So mezzanine debt being junior debt, so it's subordinate in the capital stack to the senior debt. So means it's paid after the senior debt is paid, but it's not a lien against the collateral. So it sits in that no man's land between debt and equity. It is debt, however. It has no voting rights in the operating company and has no foreclosure rights on the real estate. There's no lien from the mezzanine debt tied to the real estate. So how does the mezz lender protect their investment? Well, with UCC filings and intercreditor agreements. So you've probably heard UCC filings in the past, especially if you've done anything in the SBA space with business owners, operators. UCC filings are liens against non-real estate assets, equipment, inventory, or an entity, such as the GP in our mezzanine debt sort of scenario. So basically that means that when the lien is recorded against the collateral, the mezz lender is recording a lien as UCC filing against the GP, the entity. In some cases, if it's a business expansion that might be tied to inventory, things like that. And our take here, looking at it just construction or development, it's really going to be against the entity. And really, the UCC filing does give them an avenue to essentially foreclose on the GP if things are not going right, if they're not receiving payments on their debt, or things aren't going that route, if the GP defaults. So now you're probably thinking, well, that sounds bad because we've got a senior lender in place and they probably don't want people foreclosing on their operator when there's a development going on. So it's where we get into intercreditor agreements. So it's an agreement between the senior debt lender and the mezz debt lender that covers remedies if the GP defaults on either debt. So this kind of protects both parties. It's an agreement between mezz and senior debt where, if senior debt isn't being paid, the senior debt isn't just necessarily going to move in and foreclose on the project or take action. They'll pull the mezz debt in and say, hey, do you guys want to take over? And that might be something where, the mezz lender agrees to pay off the senior debt. It might be a situation where the mezz lender agrees to just take over payments and at that point use their UCC filing to take over operation of the project. That's something that gets worked out beforehand. So, that's something to be aware of. You need to make sure you've got a mezz lender and a senior debt lender that will work together. So really building the capital stack, from the bottom up, find the debt. If you're going to have mezz in there, it'd probably be prudent to say, hey, is that something you guys will agree with, work with, and can accommodate? So just something to keep in mind. So the mezz lender can be the same institution as the senior debt lender. That's something to be aware of. Makes the intercreditor agreement much easier. If the lender feels confident in the CRE project, they may take a mezz position also to maximize their return. This would make the intercreditor agreement streamlined and more favorable process. Obviously, it's if it's in-house back and forth, it's a lot quicker and easier. So if you have a deal that you're planning to seek mezz debt on, it might be, and the senior lien isn't placed, might be worth starting on the right foot and saying, senior lender, do you do mezz also? Can we get this done in one stack? And I know the thought initially is, well, why don't they just do it all as senior debt? Well, the point is, and we'll kind of go into this next, the mezz position, higher in the capital stack, remember, gets paid lower at the bottom, but more reward at the top. So they want to be in that more reward situation. There's more interest to be earned and whatnot. So gets us to mezz debt earns interest and is paid monthly, quarterly, or annually. It'll also have fees, PIK coupons, and possibly equity options. So mezz debt carries a coupon rate, just a running interest rate of say 9 to 14% is kind of where it's at. This accrues, the accrued interest is paid, monthly, quarterly, annually, depending on the mezz loan agreement. The debt can also have a payment in kind coupon, or it's called a PIK coupon. So this is additional interest that accrues. It's usually low, 1 to 2%, and it's basically added back into the principal balance annually. Some mezz agreements do allow this to be paid as part of the regular interest payment. So you might have a situation where you've got a 10% mezz debt, but it has an annual PIK of 2%, which really puts it at a 2% or 12% rate. And what happens is, if you've got a $10 million mezz piece, at the end of the 12 months, that 2% PIK basically turns into 200,000 that's either added back in as principal, so that's now principal accruing interest, or the GP or lender or borrower may have the option to just pay that 200,000 at that annual point if cash flow and everything else allows. But it's really designed to just kind of go back into principal balance and slightly increase the principal. So mezz debt will have a 3 to 5 year term. It will be structured to give the new development value add or business venture time to stabilize. That's something that they're looking to get to a point where they can be paid off. They want a target point. Is this going to take 12 months to develop, 12 months to stabilize and then get out, or 24 months to stabilize then get out? They want that timeline on it. However, they're underwriting these and they want to make sure they're getting their return. So if it's paid off early, mezz debt can carry a prepayment penalty. The mezz lender underwrites their deal structure based on projected returns. Therefore, they expect to see those returns over the life of the loan or recoup through a penalty fee. So, just like those PIK options, if they expect to hit that PIK option 2-3 times, and you're not going to hit it the third time, so they're going to work a prepayment penalty into that, just similar to regular senior debt financing. So also, mezz debt can have an equity kicker. The borrower can offer equity in the project in exchange for a lower interest rate. So that's a situation where the mezz piece is in debt. It's in the debt section, but to kind of if they to sweeten the deal to bring that rate down on the debt, the GP can offer a 1 to 5% of the debt as equity. So let's say the project has a threshold of a 10% IRR. for this to happen. Once it hits that 10% and the capital event happens, the project is sold or refinanced, everybody's cashed out that way, then once it hits that 10% IRR, the Mezz lender may start to see a return on a portion of what they put in. It's not as grand as the pref equity piece. It's a percentage of what they put in. Usually 1 to 5% is being placed in as and considered as an equity investment. So gives the Mezz lender then still has the protection of being in that Mezz spot, but has a little bonus reward of partaking in some of the equity return. So yeah, this gives the lender the opportunity to participate in the upside of the project and reduce developers' debt costs. Depending on the structure, this could be unattractive to additional equity investors. So, depending on how much of that kicker is there and how much equity is left, on the table, that's something, consider also when dealing with the equity piece, further up the stack, it's kind of taking away from that portion of it. So just be aware. So, and we've talked about there's multiple fees, higher interest rates, possible equity going away, the higher interest rate fees and all that. It sounds expensive. However, remember, we're only looking at a thin slice of the capital stack. It's 10 to 15%. So that thin slice at 10 to 15%, they're in the long run, the GP is giving away less than they would if they had that placed in as equity. So it does work out pretty well for them in the long run. So some mezzanine debt takeaways here. Mezzanine is debt. It's second to be repaid in the capital stack. So that's where its place is. It's that they're relatively secure, going up to 75% on the capital stack. So still pretty secure. Mezzanine debt has an higher interest rate and fees above the coupon rate that can make it expensive. However, it is a small slice of the stack. So when you're looking at mezz debt, don't just say, great, 10% sounds outstanding. Remember, find out the details. What are they going to have as a pick? What if it is a very high exit fee on an early exit? What does that look like? And then is an equity kicker going to be required, involved, or is that rate going to go up substantially if it's not given? So the Mezz lender does need to work with the senior debt lender. Some senior debt lenders may not be best suited for this structure. So again, keep that in mind. If you're going to be looking for Mezz debt, make sure that you're starting out on the right foot with the senior lender. It's going to be important. Or start out with a senior lender that does offer Mezz debt also. So Mezz debt can be an excellent option to explore when working with clients seeking pref equity. So you might have a client that's got that senior debt in place and just says, hey, I need pref equity. From a consulting approach, you could always offer, have you looked into Mezz debt also? That's 10 to 15% of the capital stack that it will cost them less in the long run. Once the math is done, assuming it's a good solid Mezz lender that has reasonable rates. So those are the takeaways, but appreciate you guys listening and hope this was helpful.